Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Happy Wednesday to all of you guys out there. We appreciate you guys being here with us as we get into it, breaking down the ACC on the football side, basketball side, and more for you guys. Happy you guys are here with us as we're another sleep closer to the national championship game as Miami continues preparations for Indiana. We've got a lot to talk about on that front as Mario Cristobal issued some injury updates ahead of the game. And we have just some thoughts additionally on the game that we're continuing to preview and drop as we get closer and closer to this one before Monday night begins. We'll have a preview show for you guys on Monday as well. We have ACC basketball discussion coming to you guys at 7:30 a.m. Central Time as James Fletcher of On3 will join us on the show to break down the ACC slate that was on Tuesday night. We'll also talk about the weekend and look ahead to the rest of the week in ACC basketball. Excited for you guys to join us for that. We, of course, have portal discussion as well. Miami misses out on a quarterback in the transfer portal. Meanwhile, UVA making some moves in the transfer portal. So we'll discuss all of that and more on this edition of All Access AM. We appreciate you guys when you subscribe to the channel All Access AM. If you are watching on Twitter, if you're watching on YouTube, and you have not subscribed to the channel yet, scan the QR code that just went up in the corner of your screen. It'll take you right to our All Access AM YouTube channel, and you could subscribe there. It's absolutely free. It just helps us grow the channel. Here's the other thing that's really cool now, and I was just messing around late last night planning the show and getting things together on Spotify and Apple. On Spotify now, you can watch the videos. You can't watch us live, of course, and the podcast drops right after the show usually, but we've got it now where we should be on video on Spotify. So I haven't checked this morning to see if it has in fact gone live. I'll do that right now, but that was pretty cool. So I enjoy having all the options available to you guys when you guys subscribe and follow us wherever you can. And so that was something that I was able to get on our All Access AM channel on Spotify is the video side of it. So that's exciting. We should be yep, there it is. Cool. So you guys can now watch the videos on our Spotify page. So make sure you guys follow us wherever you catch your podcast at. I will say this. If you search All Access AM, Apple or Spotify, whichever one, that's where, if you follow that channel, which is our All Access AM specific channel, that's where you don't get programmatic ads. So if you know the live ad reads we do, great. We appreciate you guys listening to those. That helps a lot. But those random ads that you hear listening to your podcast, we don't have those on our Spotify or Apple channel right now. So it's a great way to listen, kind of speeds up the listening experience for you guys as well and makes it cleaner. So those are not on that channel. So right now we don't have those. That's a good thing for you guys for the user experience. So all the more reason to follow us on Spotify or Apple for you guys. So I wanted to get some house cleaning out of the way this morning before we really get into the show as well and start breaking things down. So we appreciate all of you guys who join us here every single Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time as we are live on our YouTube channel. And before we get going into the show, our Wednesday show is, of course, presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions is a full-service commercial services company based right here where I'm based out of in North Texas. You also have their ability to service our friends and viewers in Oklahoma and Arkansas as well. OPW Solutions has been at this for years, creating an experience that gives you best-in-class service with also that integrity, reliability, and care that you'd expect, and that makes you feel better about your business. So whether it is your commercial landscaping, snow and ice control, it is getting to be that time of year where that you have to have covered, and they do it safely as well. So while they're on your property, you could certainly feel good about what they're going to be doing and knowing that they're not going to have accidents and be careless and things like that. That's something that they promise you with that OPW way that they do things. So make sure you check them out. Again, OPW Solutions, great way for you guys to get all your commercial services needs fulfilled. That's 214-444-2305, or email them info@opwsolutions.com. I would also follow them on their social channels as well, because they drop some great things about what they're doing in the space, how they're continuously improving their equipment and systems and facilities to better serve you. So reach out to OPW Solutions today. Have another sip of coffee here. I don't know about you guys. I am getting back into the swing of things now that 2026 is here. You're now kind of back into that routine a little bit. And for Miami, I mean, you can't imagine a better situation to be in as far as routine goes than being at home and playing for a national championship in your home stadium. Granted, I don't know if Miami is going to get their home locker room or not. They are the away team in this one, so it wouldn't shock me if they didn't get their own locker room in the national championship game. But okay, all right, Somebody said Miami is using their own locker room. They always use for home games. They always use the visitor locker room for for the uh, for the Miami home game. So interesting. We'll see how all that works out. But outside of that, they have a terrific situation here playing at home. They don't have to travel. They don't have to deal with any of that. They do have to deal with the distractions of tickets, of course, but that is all set in stone by the college football playoff. So it's kind of a wash for both sides of things. The good thing for Miami players is they don't really have to worry about their families traveling in and things like that for the most part. A lot of Miami flavor on this team. And Mario Cristobal, the leader of this Miami program, did speak with the media on Tuesday, talking about the injuries from that playoff game against Ole Miss. Akeem Mesidor did get hurt late in that game. That was a critical injury that really looked bad when the offensive lineman fell on him. And you're thinking, oh man, this is one of the emotional leaders of this team that is going to be lost potentially for an extended period of time, but not to be. Mario Cristobal said, quote, Akeem Mesidor is in great condition. He hurt his elbow for a second and he's already full throttle. Huge news for Miami fans, as he has paired incredibly well with Ruben Bain this season. You stick with the defensive line. Ahmad Moten was full throttle today, and OJ Frederic came out as well. So I didn't know if that was really came out as far as left. I assume that means practiced during the course of their workout in Miami. But another defensive back there that you've got to watch on the Miami defense. So they're battling through some things late. Everybody is. Indiana, meanwhile, is in really good shape from what Kirk Cignetti said earlier this week as well. Then you go to Elijah Lofton. He was carted to the locker room during the Ole Miss game as well. The big tight end, he is one that is going to be in question. He really got lit up in that Ole Miss game and left the game, did not return. So that was a big piece that was out for Miami for a good amount of that game. So something to watch there on the injury side of things. And other than that, I think everybody else is going to gut it out from what it seems like. Damari Brown, defensive back, is another one. It's crazy. So many of these Miami guys I've gotten to know in recruiting and covering recruiting, working for On3, and you see them now making plays for their hometown team. It's really, really cool to watch some of their dreams come true and come to fruition. I mentioned in the past talking with Mark Fletcher, after one of his high school games at American Heritage, and I think he was a junior, in that process, and was getting ready to, really ramp up his recruitment, and ends up signing with Miami. Really cool stuff there, just to look back on now as this game approaches. And I think this is one of those games that if you're a college football fan, you really should appreciate on many, many levels. And I know that people might look at that and say, well, yeah, of course, national championship. I always appreciate watching it. I don't know. This is a unique feeling to it when you have a Miami team that is playing in their home stadium. And I'm going to beat that over your head, this entire week for the most part. I just think it's so cool. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning their Super Bowl in their home stadium a few years back. That was a first. Well, Miami has the opportunity to be the first college football playoff team to win one in their home stadium. And they'll probably be one of, if not the only team to really have that opportunity for years and years to come. If you think about it, Miami does face this Indiana team that is such a good story in college football, and everyone around the country is intrigued by what Kurt Cignetti has done with this Hoosiers program that is, you know, just been listless for years and years and years. And, they've put together this team of James Madison players that broke out last year. And then they brought in this player and that player. And Fernando Mendoza wins the Heisman Trophy. And he is, the anti Carson Beck in post game interviews and with his personality and all of those things. And so you have these two clashes of programs, but when you look at their head coaches, they're so similar as far as their demeanor and how they go about staying focused on the task at hand. And that probably isn't getting enough burn when you're talking about this game, and just because it's not necessarily a matchup thing, it's just a two kind of immovable objects of coaches in terms of getting them off of their general coaching like ability and message and process, even when things don't go well for Mario Cristobal, even when, Kurt Cignetti, has a huge lead, and should be letting loose a little bit out, outside of his post-game beer comment, you have somebody who's really just locked in on what their process is. And that goes for both of these coaches. So their teams have really taken on that mentality as well. That's why they're here. The teams that are going to be most successful in today's day and age of college football are going to be the ones that can block out the other noise that is around college football right now. The NIL deals that they have to, do and make good on, the family dynamics, the agent dynamics, and focusing in on having a team that is so talented that they can win a national championship. But are you willing to do every single little thing over the course of the season to ensure, first and foremost, that you have an opportunity to be in this situation, but then go into the playoff and lock in at such a level that you leave no doubt that you can win that national championship? And here these two teams are, with that level of doubt now being eliminated. You go into this game, and despite Indiana being a touchdown-ish favorite going in, you have two teams that are playing at such a high level that most everyone around the country, I think, is picking Indiana for this game. I would think. I haven't really taken in too many of the national pundits' thoughts on this game, but that's because of Fernando Mendoza. That's because of that, personality of this Indiana team that has emerged at such a level that everybody has seen it and they're gravitating towards it. And when you think about Miami, though, and how they've locked in, it's at a similar level to what Indiana has done. It really is. It's relative, I think, to the opponents and the teams that they faced. But Miami doing what they did against Texas A&M and the way they did it, doing what they did against Ohio State and the way they did it, doing what they did to an Ole Miss team for much of the game until that fourth quarter got wild, and then they still were able to get it done. I just think it doesn't get enough credit in a sense because of what Indiana has done as far as dominating an Oregon team that they already faced and beat up on the road, I will say. And this is from someone that picked Oregon, and I should have given more credit to what Indiana had going on. And then they dominated an Alabama team that really, when you look back on the College Football Playoff Committee decision, shouldn't have been in. Yeah, they did lose that SEC championship game. That was kind of, some people thought maybe, hey, that kind of confirms what we think about Alabama. Good team, just not good enough to be in. Notre Dame, Miami, they should be in. But the committee didn't want to set that precedent of moving them a conference championship game appearance out of the college football playoff. So they just set the precedent that they're going to move somebody else out who just didn't play, who was already ranked above both those teams. So really just weird situation from that college football playoff committee. But I think Indiana just gets talked about so much that we're not appreciating how much these two teams have done in a positive manner to get to this place, and to leave no doubt that these two teams, whichever one wins it, you feel good that I think that we've got the national champion that the people deserve, so to speak. And Indiana would really be that, at a high level, going undefeated in not, their entire season. They just didn't play anybody in non-conference. Miami had a more challenging, season, you could really argue in a sense. But, these two teams really are two tremendous representations of what college football is looking for in today's day and age. I think Miami is tracking a little bit towards that Ohio State trend where they kind of dip just a touch enough to lose two one possession games in the middle of their season, and they picked it back up and they've been on a roll ever since. Indiana, the closest thing they had really was that Penn State game where just incredible heroics to win that one, and from there they kind of kept rolling. So had a couple of other things here. I wanted to look at the Miami offense versus this Indiana defense. I think it's one of the intriguing matchups of this game. Of course, I talked about Carson Beck versus Fernando Mendoza, but diving into Indiana's defense as a whole, a lot has been made about the size difference on the offensive line for Miami versus the Indiana offense, or versus the Indiana defensive line, which is a little bit more kind of spark plug, diamond in the rough, guys that are playing at such a high level, high motor, all of those things. And, which unit is going to come out on top? Are you going to get, the pesky Indiana defense that is giving up 11.9 points per game this season, 274 yards per game, or are we going to see Miami hit that 30-point mark, which has them right on the cusp of being a top 25 offense, almost 400 yards per game? They're one of the best teams as far as converting third and fourth downs. They have a lot to offer in this game situationally that is important to keep an eye on. Red zone, we talked about that against Ole Miss, and Miami was really able to do a good job in the red zone against the Rebels, and that ended up being the difference, converting those touchdowns while you have those opportunities versus settling for field goals. That was critical. They were able to get on the Ole Miss side of the field and really convert those. Meanwhile, when you look at the Indiana defense, they're top 10 in third down defense. They're incredible. Now, fourth down, not great. Red zone, 40th, middle of the road. Miami, top 30 in red zone, scoring. And I think we've seen a lot of that come in terms of touchdowns. Miami also taking the ball away and winning the turnover margin for the most part, top 20. But here's the thing, Indiana, number one in turnover margin per game. That's going to be huge to watch. We've seen, I think, some of these stats, at least from watching, and I think they're good values. They're good values from where I get them, teamrankings.com. But now they're tweaked a little bit with the college football playoff appearances in them as well. So, for example, I look at field goal kicking as a huge piece here, right? Hard Rock Stadium down there in Miami, it's outdoor. So, number one, they've got the whatever you want to call it, roof, kind of spacecraft looking building going on above it to cover the seats, but really it's an outdoor facility. So, could any sort of weather play a factor in field goal kicking this time around? We'll see. We saw that impact Miami's field goal kicking. Uh, their field goal kicking with Carter Davis, one of the best in the country. That's been well documented. His stats are currently skewed by that windy day in College Station where he went 1 of 4. You take out that game completely, makes, misses, all of that, and you're looking at somebody who is 16 of 19 on the season, and his last miss was against Ole Miss in the Dome. So worth noting in that regard, but he's still one of the very best in college football at field goal kicking. And then Nico Radicic with Indiana called upon pretty sparingly, 16 of 17 on the year. So high efficiency. I think he led the country in extra points. It doesn't, really stand out as a strength to me for Indiana. I I I kind of recall, and if Indiana fans, stumble upon this pod, maybe they can correct me in the comments, but I kind of recall watching some of Indiana's games this year where they didn't necessarily trot out the field goal unit in long field goal range situations. I could be totally off. It could be wrong. It could be a product of, having an offense that finishes drives with touchdowns. But I think Miami, you kind of circle that field goal place kicking situation and give them the edge here. Will that play a factor in this one? That'll be something to keep an eye on as well. And with the Miami offense, having to, I think, score touchdowns in this game, that's really, really important that their offensive line gets those reps in the run game early, that they don't abandon the run. One thing I was scrolling on three, and one of the national aggregators quoted, Todd McShay, NFL draft analyst, college football analyst, and he said, really they can't get cute against Indiana, and I think that is a great point. You look at some of the flea flickers, you look at some of the end arounds and the wildcat on 3rd and 3 against Ole Miss that got stuffed. All of these things that Shannon Dawson has tried at various moments, they don't need to get into against Indiana. I think they have to play this game pretty straight up. Oregon got down early and really kind of had to abandon probably their entire game plan. I thought Oregon had a good bit of success running the ball, even with a poor running back situation. And they just let the game get out of hand. And they obviously couldn't really run the ball then. They had to throw it and not, take time off the clock and all of those things. But that's something, especially I thought, Miami's going to line up under center at times. They're going to look a little bit more pro style than Oregon does for the most part. But some of the shotgun runs that they were able to get on Indiana's defense, things that Shannon Dawson has to sit there on tape and say, okay, I like what I see. I like that opportunity there. And if somehow they get Elijah Lofton into this game too, that would give them another versatile tight end blocking, in that run game that can help them in that regard. But you also have somebody that Jacoby Thomas called Vanilla Vic. That's Carson Beck. He's not a running quarterback. It was more of a joke for sure. But you have somebody now who I think is super comfortable moving around in the pocket at this playoff level. He's looked more comfortable, I think, than at any point this season, extending plays and making plays down the field. We saw the Keelan Marion touchdown. We saw him extend a play and get into the end zone for the game-winning score. All of those things that, I think at times this year, we would see Carson Beck throw a ball away, not take some of the certain risks that he did in the college football playoff. And we've seen him, almost get burned at times. I thought there was one throw along the sideline that he tried against Ole Miss where you're like, whoa, that was really, really close to being intercepted. You have somebody in Carson Beck, though, that is playing with a large amount of confidence because of the way he's producing and because of the way he's playing. That could bleed over into this national championship game. So if you're Shannon Dawson, you give the rock to Mark Fletcher. You give the rock to that Miami run game and you lean on it. And you don't need to get cute. I don't think this Indiana defense, with their team speed, and they only play like 13, 14, 15 guys on defense, not a huge rotation, but they run to the ball hard. They're quick, they're aggressive, and they hit. And they will absolutely bring it in that regard. This Miami offensive line, which has been ready for the entire college football playoff run, has to do the same as well. And I know Shannon Dawson will stick with the run game. I am not too worried about that. I'm worried that at certain moments when you have an opportunity, and we saw this against Ole Miss, Miami had an opportunity to put their foot down a little bit on the throat, extend their lead. They get cute, they get a penalty, something of that nature, and it sets them back. And so Miami has a lot to lean on when it comes to their basic packages, their basic run plays. if they can continue to kind of hone in on that instead of getting cute against this Indiana defense, I think it's really important for their potential in this national championship game. I don't want to say it'll make or break this game because we've seen Miami win these games at such a pace right now in the college football playoff while getting cute. But you have a team in Miami that doesn't need that extra, I think, burden over the course of a college football playoff national championship game to get past this Indiana team. And appreciate Mark Klein jumping in. When Carson Beck actually opens up and runs hard, he is a great runner. The issue is when he plays timid. Same thing with his deep balls. When he tries to place it, he gets in trouble. Great point, Mark. Absolutely. I think from a running standpoint, he has a great feel for how to get the most out of his runs and really has a nice feel for that. He is not going to be the most fleet of foot, but Fernando Mendoza isn't going to bring anything to the table there. So he certainly has that matchup in the national championship game, on lock as far as being able to run a little bit more, in my opinion. But Carson Beck, he is just playing without any regard for his body. He's giving it his all, and that's what you want to see now. So whatever Shannon Dawson is doing in terms of his confidence and his aggressive nature, we like to see it. We like to see it because that's what's getting it done right now in the college football playoff with Miami. So appreciate you being here, Mark. We do appreciate you guys tuning in. We have a guest to bring in on All Access AM, a returning guest, of course, always here for us on All Access AM as we bring him in once again. And that is James Fletcher of On3. James, thanks for joining us. Talk some ACC hoops this morning. How's it going, man?
Everything's great. Just happy to be part of this and talk some ACC hoops. Always glad to hop on and break it down with you.
Let's go back to this weekend of ACC hoops, a top 25 matchup. Duke hosting SMU. SMU without Boopy Miller in this game. The Mustangs made it a little bit of a game at certain points, but they just weren't able to get it done. They go 0-for-2 on this road trip out to the East Coast, really losing at Clemson. The offense didn't show up, and then they lose at Duke in really a hard-fought game. What were your takeaways on both SMU and Duke watching their weekend action?
Yeah, I thought it was good for Duke to get a top 25 win in the ACC. Over the past couple of years, there just haven't been a lot of those available on the board. This year, much different. You look at the bracketology picture, we're putting out our first bubble watch later on this morning, and there is just a stark difference. If you go pull up last year's at this time, the number of ACC teams that were even in the mix under consideration when we talk about the bubble and the more to do columns, we've got more teams maybe in the should be in the field column than we have had in years for this conference. And so really good for Duke to get a nice win there, get things rolling against the top end competition, keep things rolling because they obviously got that win against Louisville as well, a Mikel Brownless Louisville team that has struggled without him. But on the SMU side, it's hard to say I was impressed in a loss, but I did think that it showed that they really are in this upper tier of the ACC, that they are one of these NCAA tournament caliber teams to really hang with Duke without Boopy Miller, like you said. I think this is a really talented team that they've got to string it together. They've got to get things kind of clicking at the right time in the right ways, but they've got all the potential in the world to not just be in the NCAA tournament, but make a little bit of noise as well.
When you look at Bubble Watch, I'm glad you brought that up. Tease us a little bit. Any teams of note that really jump out to you on that Bubble Watch for the ACC?
Yeah, I think right now it's just the depth of the conference that we haven't seen in a long time, like I mentioned there. But just to name a couple of teams that did impress me with where they stood, Miami has to be first among them. This is a team that early on in the season, it looked like, okay, they've got a new coach. They've definitely got things headed the right direction. They've got a little bit more of an identity this year. But I was at that Florida game that was played in Jacksonville, and it felt like, okay, this is a team that could make some noise down the line if they get things rolling. Well, now they've gotten things rolling. They're now 15-2, one of the best starts in Miami history. now that Jay Lucas has strung together here just to start his career. So things are definitely trending in the right direction for them. I really like their trajectory and what they're able to do. And I think that Virginia is also a team that, when we talk about bubble watch, might not be get a lot of airtime because they're so far ahead of the bubble right now. Year one under Ryan Odom, they have gotten themselves up into the top 16 seed conversation. So would be hosting somewhere along the line. And they continue to rise their stock. We look at the results from last night. Virginia picks up a big win to help their case to keep catapulting them up that board.
And one team that I think is still working through some things as we've watched them in conference play is North Carolina, and they edge out Wake Forest on Saturday in a really close one. But a lot of Tar Heel fans talking about the point guard situation there in Chapel Hill. What is your take on one of the hottest discussions among ACC fans, but really Tar Heel fans right now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because they've got a lot of talent in that backcourt. It's about finding the ways that it fits together. We know that Evans is very talented, Trimble, but they've had injuries in that backcourt. They've also had some ups and downs trying to figure out who's going to be on the ball, who's going to play off the ball more. We've seen them have their guards come up in big clutch situations down the stretch. So I think it's kind of the ebbs and flows of the season. It's easy for guards, particularly, to kind of be bogged down if their efficiency numbers just aren't up there, or if they're struggling with something this may be hampering their speed just that little bit. It can show up in different ways. So I'm not overly concerned about the guard situation in North Carolina, but it definitely is something to watch as we talk about them as one of the elite teams and their ability to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
I think the league has to start talking more and more about Virginia. You know, obviously they take care of business over the weekend against Stanford, 15-point win and a nice win at home. But Tuesday night, big one, and they come away with a win over Louisville on the road, 9 points, 79-70. You know, this Virginia team, after last year not necessarily being probably what they all wanted or had in mind with the changes, they're off to a 15-2 start. They're 4-1 in ACC play. What is standing out to you about this team and how they've put it all together?
I think it's just the efficiency. You look at all the metrics, the analytic data, and it all tells you that they have things clicking at a high level. And it's not with a bunch of 5 stars. Look, they went out and they got an interesting mix of guys. You got a Jakari White, who's become a fan favorite there, a Sam Lewis, guys who weren't big household names, but had produced and starred in their role at different levels of college basketball at different stops along the way. Then you go fill that out with a Tice DeRitter, who one of the controversial European additions to college basketball, an older guy who had played professionally, comes over here and now has eligibility. But we're seeing the benefits of that. If it's allowed for these coaches to go out and recruit these players, there is no reason not to add guys like DeRitter to your roster because he comes in and just immediate impact. He's been one of their best scorers. He provides a steadiness out there on the court. You know exactly what you're getting from him night in and night out. Something that if you bring in an 18-year-old freshman, you cannot promise. Even the best 18-year-old freshmen that we're seeing across the country, you see some ups and downs throughout different games when they see different looks that they've never seen before. You see them have to work through that and figure it out. You can't really throw many things at DeRitter that he hasn't seen before. And so that's been big for them. And then Johan Grunlow, a different type of international prospect, somebody who was an NBA prospect in the last draft class, who received a lot of interest from NBA teams. He's got great defensive skills. He's shown them in his youth stages of basketball, and now bringing that to the college game, we're seeing him kind of take things to another level and be able to impact in a real way the college game, which of course doesn't have a defensive 3 seconds rule, allowing him to be even more of a menace in the paint.
Malik Thomas had 19 points for UVA, looking like somebody that is really, I think, coming into his own as well at the guard spot, a veteran player. What have you seen from him in a night that, again, we'll talk about Louisville in a second, without Michael Brown, but still a huge performance from him and somebody that, with UVA is playing some really good ball as well.
Yeah, Malik is another perfect example of what I was just talking about. A guy who's bounced around in the college game, a veteran guy, end of his college career. He starred in a it's always hard, the mid-major situation in the West Coast Conference, but he played up against the Gonzagas, the St. Mary's on a consistent basis. He's seen high level of competition, and we know that he's produced in those games. And so I think he was a really safe bet for a team in the transfer portal that was going to land him. Just again, because of the age, the maturity, the amount of things he's seen in the game before, his understanding of getting to his spots, and the consistency in which he has put up results in the past few years. I thought that he was a home run addition from the start when Virginia landed him in the offseason. And he's really proven that and become a steady force, help them in that scoring department. And that's really the thing that I love about this Virginia team is that they do star in their role. Jakari White's not going out there trying to score 30 points every game. Tice DeRitter is not trying to run the offense every game. Johan Grunlow is not demanding a bunch of paint touches every game. Everybody understands I am on this roster to do fill in the blank, whatever my best skill set is. For Malik Thomas, that is scoring the ball and providing that backcourt punch that you need to kind of give a Tice DeRitter at the forward spot, to give your bigs a little bit more time to catch their breath at times. He can then go take over a game and have the ball in his hand.
When you look at Louisville, how is the committee going to view Louisville without Michael Brown in this stretch that they've been without him? And, Isaac McNeely led all scorers with 23 points, but it's just not enough from the Cards at home on this Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation because we know that the committee can take into account if your star player was injured. And they flashed a graphic on the broadcast last night. This is a team that is a one-loss team with Mikel Brown in the lineup. Now, that, of course, was during the non-conference schedule. So that's another thing to take into account. What was the strength of those wins? Did they just run up a bunch of wins with him against low-level competition? Or is this a situation where without Mikel Brown, this just isn't the same team? And so we're going to have to look at his health down the road and then determine what we do with Louisville. I don't think that they're in real danger either way, but it will impact the seed line. And as we know, that can have a big impact on who you face and your odds of moving on to the next round in the NCAA tournament. So going to be something that's definitely worth watching. Another thing worth watching is Mikel Brown's stats in games against big competition, because early on in the non-conference schedule, as a freshman, as one of the younger guys in this class, he had some struggles at times against the best teams and was dominating against the lower level competition. So another little wrinkle there as we look at his impact and how it's going to impact what the committee thinks.
When we look at Miami, 4-0 in ACC play now, 15-2 on the season. They did beat Notre Dame. I'm not here to, pound the table over that one. 81-69 win over the Irish. And Notre Dame is dealing with its own struggles on and off the court, it seems like at this point. But with Miami, Trey Donaldson leading the way for them as well. 23 points in that game. Miami was able to hold Notre Dame to just 2 scores in double figures. It seems like Jai Lucas is really, I don't know if we're there yet as far as making them a huge storyline, but got to be inching closer with at least the start to ACC play, at 4-0 now. And they might get to 6, 7, 8-0 before they drop one. That Stanford one is kind of one that stands out to me down the stretch.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. They're on a 10-game win streak now. This is one of the hottest teams in college basketball. I think they're going to start getting some love from AP voters. I think that they're going to more and more climb into the conversation as we talk about the ACC. And like you said, they've got some opportunities to string together even more here in the conference schedule. So this is a team really impressive under Jay Lucas in year one. Like I said, I saw them early in the season and thought, good collection of talent. He's definitely raised the bar, definitely got this thing headed in the right direction, but we'll see what it turns out to be in terms of this season's success. Would it be a bubble year where you kind of go through and At the end of it, you say either, look, we got into the field, or all right, we just missed it, but it's year one. Well, they're shooting well above that right now. They're on a pace to be in the conversation for much higher seeding than I previously thought that they would be in the mix for. And you just keep stringing together wins, and you'll get yourself into a big conversation across college basketball very quickly, especially in this strengthened ACC conference.
Wednesday night, kind of a little ho-hummy. I would say we've got Pittsburgh at Georgia Tech, 6 p.m. on ACC Network. North Carolina at Stanford, 8 p.m. on ACC Network. Virginia Tech at SMU, 8 p.m. on ESPNU. And then Duke out at Cal as well, 10 p.m. on ACC Network. Those are all central times for you guys out there. So you've got both sides of the UNC Duke rivalry headed out to California, and both teams having to deal with that travel, and they do so, funny enough, without, I don't think school's in session for Duke yet. The students are back. I'm not sure about UNC, but kind of interesting timing there when they put the midweek game all the way out on the West Coast. But any chance we see these teams trip up with that tricky travel schedule? I mean, they did it last year, but it's always a kind of a tough thing to watch.
Yeah, I think that there's always a chance, especially when you're going full coast to coast, North Carolina all the way out to California. But I think that these two teams are better than the competition that they're going to face. But by that same statement, Cal and Stanford have not been the pushovers that you maybe thought they were going to be at times throughout this season. Both have put together a couple of nice wins, some wins that make you kind of turn your head and think, all right, you can't just rule them out. You can't say, all right, we'll just put down a W because we played Cal, we played Stanford, and we'll head back home. That's not what the case is right now. Those are two teams that have some fight, have some real danger to them when you face them. So going to be interesting. It'll be a really big test, and a test that is interesting beyond just college teams having to travel across the country. It's interesting because we're talking about, with Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson, two guys who want to be in the NBA next year, want to have big time careers where they will be traveling from one end of the country all the way to the next, playing the next day, and then getting on a plane and doing it again the next day. So it's going to be an interesting test for them early on in their basketball careers. How do they adjust to travel? How do they handle just a complete change to their body clock? Going to be a real interesting one there.
And both of those teams will then flip-flop on Saturday, facing the opposite side of the Cal-Stanford rivalry. So they're spending the week out in Cali. Nice time of year to spend it. I'm sure Coach K getting some Napa time maybe out there if he's making the trip out there with them. But you look at this Saturday slate as well as we look ahead. 11 a.m. on Saturday Central Time, Virginia travels to SMU, a pair of teams that have been in the top 25 last week. SMU dropped out after the 0-2 week this past week, but Moody Coliseum is a tough place to play. Virginia, though, is playing at such a high level. Assuming Boopy Miller is good to go, I think he's back Wednesday night when SMU takes on Virginia Tech. He's been around practice this week, so it's just kind of a matter of making sure his strength is back up after losing everything he did this weekend. Virginia, though, is going to provide quite the test. Two veteran guards going at it, Malik Thomas that we talked about, Boopy Miller. This is a game that if SMU really has those tournament aspirations to make a run like you talked about earlier in the show, I think they've got to get this one done to kind of get back on track, and that could sneak them right back into the top 25.
Yeah, it's a really important week for SMU. We talked about both ends of the Cal-Stanford rivalry. They get to play both ends of the Virginia Tech rivalry here this week. And Virginia Tech, a bubble team who is no slouch. They've got some really good players. They've kind of tapered down since the start of the season in their efficiency, but still a very dangerous team. And so you cannot risk an 0-4 stretch in ACC play. That's just not going to get the job done. You're going to plummet in a lot of these rankings if you have a stretch like that. You've also 1-3 also is going to be a struggle to kind of justify to the committee when you're ranking yourself head to head with other competition, when you want a good seed at the end of all of this. So I think it's a really important week. I think that they've got to handle the midweek. And then, like you said, playing that Virginia team, Yes, they're at home. They have that advantage, but Virginia is rolling right now, and you don't want to come in there on a skid and lacking any confidence because Virginia, if they take advantage of that one, you put yourself in a really bad spot in the ACC standings and have yourself falling down the board in bracketology. So really important week for SMU. If they can string together 2 wins, though, on the other side, like you said, they could jump easily back into the top 25 and get themselves back into the conversation of the top ACC teams.
We'll end on this. Miami, Clemson, and when I talked about Miami earlier, I guess I completely missed this little trip that they've got on Saturday. Clemson has been incredible the last 2 seasons in ACC play. Of course, hosting them at Little John as well. This is if Jai Lucas is ready to say, "Hey, Miami basketball is here to stay," this is a win that if they could get would be monumental in that respect, because this is one of the toughest places to play, as SMU found out last week too.
Yeah, Clemson undefeated at home this season. Like you said, they are the model of consistency in the ACC right now. I mean, in these lean years that the conference has had over the past few years, it has really become Duke and then Clemson and then what's North Carolina up to? And obviously, we've got so many more teams in the mix this year, but Clemson is asserting themselves saying, hey, just because other teams are back up does not mean we're going back down the conference standings. We're here to stay. They're right up in the mix for the best team in the ACC right now, right behind, I think, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia. But they're still there. They're still hanging in. They're an AP top 25 team right now, and a team that's solidly in the field when you look at the bracketology metrics. So this is a Clemson team that will be a big, big test for Miami. And I don't think that either team that comes out of here with the loss is going to take a big ding because they're both well respected in college basketball right now.
James Fletcher, awesome stuff, joining us from On3 Bracketologist. We look forward to Bubble Watch, my friend. We'll do this again soon.
All right, for sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he goes. James Fletcher on this Wednesday morning. Appreciate all of you guys for being here with us, and appreciate our friends at the La La Land Foundation as well, supporting what we do here at All Access AM. And if you haven't ever been to a La La Land Kind Cafe, I encourage you to make it a New Year's resolution to find one. Find one close to you and support what they do from a kindness standpoint. And you could buy a cup of coffee, you could buy a pastry, you could buy their matcha, whatever you want in that regard. But the La La Land Foundation is where your new year should really start. And for those of you in the corporate space who can enact change within your company to get involved with a foundation and find a new charitable focus for your company this year, I encourage you to look at the La La Land Foundation. Go to lalalandfoundation.com to find out how you can get involved. There's events, there's monetary donations, there's in-kind donations, there's scholarships, there's mentorships, all different ways to help the evolving needs of communities that the La La Land Foundation serves as they help youth transition into adulthood from the foster care system in particular. That is what they're all about, is helping make the future of this country and everywhere better through serving those who need a little bit of help transitioning into adulthood. And that can just be, basic business sense. That can be, preparing them for work dinners or work environments that they'll face and they'll experience as they get into the workplace. And they do it in a multitude of ways. So I encourage you to partner with one of our partners, the La La Land Foundation, today. It's all about kindness and supporting those who just need a little bit of a help up into their next phase of life. So as we close out the show here, gonna kind of scatter shoot here, but on my rundown, which you grab a couple of those ACC accomplished greatness notepads from media days, and that is what I work on throughout the year. The ACC at the quarterback position has always been a fun one to watch, and we've talked about that on the podcast throughout. What Virginia is doing in the transfer portal looks like a little bit of chestnut checkers in how they've approached it, as they've been able to add 2 well-known quarterbacks to their roster, and now they have their starter for the 2026 season, bringing in Missouri transfer quarterback and former Penn State quarterback Bo Pribula. One of the best quarterbacks that was available in the transfer portal is going to be a who, and he is going to replace Chandler Morris. He moves into the starting role for UVA in all likelihood after completing 182 of 270 passes this season for 1,941 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9 picks. He also ran for 297 yards and 6 touchdowns. So going to bring that running threat to Tony Elliott's offense. And he did miss multiple games to an ankle injury. And so he really kind of struggled in the SEC in part because of that. 3 touchdowns, 7 picks in SEC play. You get him into this ACC, this Virginia offense. I think he's going to, if you're looking for an early hot take here, I think he's going to be an upgrade over Chandler Morris. Now, where can he get to as far as the intangibles go? Can he bring that? Can he deliver those moments that Chandler Morris did? That's going to be the question. But I think statistically, we're going to see Bo Pribula be an upgrade in that regard for this Tony Elliott offense. I really like him. He came from Penn State, where he left during that college football playoff run. He'll obviously face his former coach in James Franklin here this season as well. So going to be fascinating to see how that one plays out. But Virginia wasn't done. They went out and added former Pitt quarterback and former Alabama quarterback Eli Holstein, who got replaced as the starter at Pitt really the last 2 seasons. And true freshman Mason Heinchel eventually took over. But Eli Holstein, threw for 1,081 yards on 125 pass attempts, completing 77 of those this season, 12 touchdowns, but 6 picks were the problem. And he threw half of those in losses to West Virginia and Louisville. And then, of course, Mason Heinchel took over. He's a highly touted former quarterback. The idea here is that he would come in and then be the starter in the 2027 season. So going to be interesting to see that quarterback room for UVA now, because when Chandler Morris went down, that was one of their losses, was Wake Forest, in that game without Chandler Morris, and they really couldn't get anything going offensively. This year, that shouldn't be the case when you look at Eli Holstein being the backup to Bo Pribula if Bo Pribula does get hurt. So really nice moves there by Tony Elliott in the transfer portal to address the quarterback position. Miami, though, misses out on Sam Leavitt, the Arizona State quarterback transfer that, of course, is a major, major piece to the transfer portal quarterback search. And Miami is now continuing down its hunt for transfer portal quarterbacks. Where do they go? Where do they go for their next quarterback after Carson Beck? There are a few names that jump off the page right away. Hassan Longstreet, USC quarterback, was a 5-star prospect in the 2025 cycle. He only made 4 appearances for the Trojans this season. Did some good things, is a highly thought of quarterback in the transfer portal. And then, of course, Ethan Grunkmeyer is another big name from Penn State who flashed some good things against Clemson in their bowl game. And, of course, once Drew Aller went down, he threw for 1,339 yards and 8 touchdowns to 4 picks. Virginia Tech, of course, keeping a close eye on Ethan Grunkmeyer, and he's expected to be the quarterback there. But can Miami change that? Can they make a move? That is something that we're going to be watching really closely there, because we're seeing the quarterback position in the transfer portal be incredibly competitive. We're seeing some flips. We saw that with Kenny Minchie flipping from Nebraska to Kentucky. There are still quarterbacks out there that haven't completely signed yet. And there are also still 2 more days for the transfer portal to continue on here and have guys enter. Could be fascinating to watch that situation play out if they can. Let's be honest here. Teams are doing it around the country. Who can tamper the best? That is going to be the question. Who can get you somebody into the portal that then becomes your starting quarterback? That is going to be something to keep an eye on. Oregon quarterback Austin Novosad just entered the portal as well. He was a former really highly touted quarterback. And, Miami is making some moves in the transfer portal now. We talked about them getting a couple of commitments, as of late, but they still need that quarterback now once Carson Beck leaves. And the big one that I would say you could kind of circle in a sense is what just happened last night with Elijah Brown, the former four-star and Stanford quarterback, entering the transfer portal uh, Tuesday night. And that one, came about, and he was somebody that, had a lot of promise at Stanford, but is now leaving the program. A really intriguing kind of dual threat quarterback. I think you keep an eye on him. Former modern day quarterback, has played a lot of ball over the last 2 seasons for Stanford, but didn't end up getting really the starting role too much this season, but was able to lead Stanford to that win over Cal, and has had a good bit of experience. At this point, when you look at who's available in the transfer portal, Miami is going to have to get somebody major into the portal to address their quarterback need. Who is that going to be? If not, what do we see in the portal right now? We've talked a lot about, the guys and the options that Miami could have in that respect. And it's going to be fascinating to watch because you see what they did last year with Carson Beck. Now, here's a big story that came out on Tuesday. Chris Lowe of On3 reporting that Ty Simpson obviously got a ton of NIL offers, big numbers to turn down the NFL and stay in college. Well, Miami was one of them. Here's the quote from Ty Simpson. And this is, as he mentioned, Ole Miss mentioning $4 million, Tennessee mentioning as far as $5 million. But man, Miami ran up the number to $6.5 million. Incredible. But he talked with his father, Jason, who's the head coach at UT Martin, and he said, quote, "I felt really good with my decision to go pro, but that amount of money to play college football again for what amounts to about 8 months makes you stop and think. I remember my parents telling me that $6 million was more than they had made the whole time they had been married, but the thing they wanted most for me was to be happy." So he ends up going pro. He said that, he would have ruined everything that he did at Alabama if he had continued to play college football and did it elsewhere after making his decision to go pro. So Miami looking to spend big on the quarterback position. Of course, we know that, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they bring in. Or is it going to be a position that they're going to have to assemble such an incredible amount of talent around that they're going to have a true game manager style? And Carson Beck is that to an extent, but a true game manager style that they're going to have to work around all next season could be one of Shannon Dawson's most daunting coaching challenges that he's faced since being at Miami. Very, very big domino to watch is what Miami does at quarterback in 2026. Couple more transfer news. Duke transfer cornerback Mekhi Jones committed to Florida State on Tuesday. He played for Duke last season, played in all 14 games, 35 tackles, a sack, forced fumble recovery, and a pass breakup. Has 3 years remaining. So a really high upside pickup here for the Seminoles. You got to like what they did there, bringing in an instant impact transfer defensive back after losing Earl Little Jr. to Ohio State, and just kind of, again, shoring up that position as a whole for the Seminoles. Miami did pick up a transfer defensive lineman from Ohio State. Jarquez Carter committed to the Hurricanes. He was an early enrollee for the Buckeyes in the 2025 class. He now leaves and heads to Miami after just one season. This seems like a Dante Simpson for Jarquez Carter trade in a sense. Dante Simpson ends up committing to Missouri, but you replace what you lost with Dante Simpson, somebody who was on campus for 1 year, redshirted. Now Jarquez Carter can come into Miami and play right away after redshirting this season for Ohio State. You did have a couple of other notable names that popped up for Miami as well. Missouri transfer edge Damon Wilson is back in the transfer portal. Former Georgia defender as well, and somebody who is highly thought of. Alabama, Miami, Texas Tech pushing for him there. And he did visit LSU this past weekend. The dead period runs until Thursday. Guys will arrive Wednesday night for visits, and then they will get going on those visits on their Thursday. So a lot to get to in that regard. Yes, I agree, Pierce. Gross money for college. The system's broken. We'll talk about one other piece here, and then I'll get you guys out of here to all of this. But man, when you look at uh, let's rapid fire here. A couple more transfers I want to talk about. North Carolina transfer defensive back Ty White is flipping sides of this rivalry, heading over to NC State. Played in 12 games at Chapel Hill, but just made 5 tackles. So a depth piece here for NC State from the Tar Heels comes in. And Miami is also not done. They are involved in Colorado offensive lineman Jordan Seaton, who is believed to be instant impact signee. This is my gut because who knows what obviously Miami has up their sleeve. IMG Academy kid from Washington, D.C., Jordan Seaton, former 5-star, number 1 offensive tackle in the transfer portal now. With Francis Maui Noah leaving, you do have Jackson Cantwell coming in as a 5-star. Will that impact Miami's ability to bring him in and bring him into the program, as they do have Markel Brown, of course, as well on that Miami offensive line, who is, just one of the best offensive tackles in the country. Will they, have to, make a decision there on him? He's just unbelievable in what he does. He's going to have a really interesting matchup there with that, Indiana defensive line. But Miami's always going to invest in their offensive line. He is, still a young player in that system. So how much wiggle room does Miami have to add a Jordan Seaton? That would be my question, moving into that. So coaches did vote to extend the redshirt rule to 9 games. And for those of you who are wondering, like, what a weird number, basically it accounts for most of the season. It accounts for the conference slate. And then you can, kind of pick and choose your games as a whole. If you have a couple cupcakes, you could sit guys out. If you have a game that you should win, you could sit a guy out. The goal here is to get 5 for 5 pushed through in terms of guys having 5 years to play no matter what. And that eliminates coaches being held hostage by agents, by players who want to leave the program and go somewhere else and play. We, of course, know that the 4-game blanket redshirt rule was great when it was thought of, kind of pre-NIL-ish. And the idea that, okay, all right, instead of just like worrying about what 4 games or this or that with injuries, and it was kind of confusing in a sense, now it's just 4 games. Well, usually after September, we see guys drop off redshirt if they don't like their role and then go and transfer. If you could just play in 9 games, that means you're going to play throughout the season no matter what. You're expected to play. The postseason doesn't count. And that kind of helps push through 5 for 5. And that kind of takes one more thing off the coach's plate as far as knowing that, hey, these guys are going to keep their red shirt, but they're going to play in 9 games. If I don't have them for 3, whatever, I'm good, but I can get these guys for 5 years still. So it's kind of a win-win move for the coaches. So hopefully this gets pushed through. This would eliminate a lot of the talking points around, oh, well, former highly touted, defensive back signee in the 2025 class is redshirting this season, will be unavailable the rest of the way. Coaches are hoping that gets pushed through. Couple other news here. SMU also did pick up 3 transfer portal commitments since we last spoke. Kendrick Raphael committed to SMU, the former Cal Golden Bear, and the ACC's leader in rushes last year is signed with the Mustangs. He's expected to be an instant impact running back for them, almost 1,000 yards last season. He was a part of the team that kept SMU out of the ACC championship game. So he comes over now after 2 years at NC State and 1 year at Cal, looking to finish off his college career with a big season. He had 943 rushing yards on 4.1 yards per carry with 13 scores and 34 receptions, 245 yards, and another touchdown. So a really good addition for SMU. And then they add Clemson linebacker Jamal Anderson from the transfer portal, the son of former All-Pro running back and Atlanta Falcon Jamal Anderson is now headed to SMU. SMU running back Chris Johnson Jr. heading to Clemson. So kind of a trade there for SMU and Clemson, but Jamal Anderson comes in as a rotational depth linebacker kind of guy for the Mustangs. So as we close out here, want to say I appreciate OPW Solutions for sponsoring the show. We appreciate La La Land Foundation for sponsoring the show as well. The transfer portal's wild. We'll continue to cover it for you guys as well, and we'll do more of that on Thursday's show, and we'll continue to preview Miami, Indiana for the national championship. So I hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. Please, 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 whether it be the podcast or the YouTube, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share us, rate us, review us. And this is a great reminder. I want to shout out MJ Milliburn, who reviewed us on Apple. We really appreciate that. Thank you for the 5-star review. So jump on Apple, jump on Spotify, rate us, review us, comment, do all of those things. And we really appreciate all of you guys who have made this show so fun for us. And we appreciate the interaction in the chat as always. So happy Wednesday. Hope you guys have a great one, and we'll catch you Thursday.